Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Counter. Now, stress and anxiety is the main theme for this season, so we would be remiss, second time in an episode I've used that word, if we didn't discuss alcohol as a coping mechanism for stress, anxiety, sleep, all of that kind of stuff. But before we get to that, one thing I wanted to mention, specifically because of our special guest here today, John Bellitti, a.k.a. Johnny Be Good, a.k.a. my father. When I was growing up, myself, a lot of my friends, anyone I knew who found out my dad was a pharmacist, the first thing, if we were, all hanging out doing whatever, is, hey, Vince, can we ask your dad, or even me, hey, Dad, can I drink on this medicine? Or is it okay if I have a glass of wine with this medicine, or a beer with this medicine, or that kind of stuff? So I thought we would, start here by talking a little bit about different medication as it relates to alcohol and that kind of stuff, because it's just funny talking about that, because literally my entire life, having you as a pharmacist, that was your predominant resource for me.
I do recall several of those calls and some texts too, and some of the people who didn't listen. I remember some stories after.
Yes, one of my friends did not listen. Yeah, that was not a good idea. Yeah.
So yes, I do recall that, and that is a common question that we get. Can I drink with this? But I always say you have to really look at the person and ask them, when you say you're going to drink. Everybody considers a drink or drinking differently, and you have to really look at the quantities. Like somebody who's a casual drinker who may over the course of a night have 1 to 2 drinks,
sure,
versus and that may be once a week or at most, versus a person who drinks more regularly and maybe 5 times a week has at least 3 drinks. So that's somebody who I would call a more frequent or not chronic user maybe.
And how you answer depends on.
Well, yeah, sometimes it does, because sometimes it's there are interactions, and sometimes there are things that are just because if you've had. For example, like, what do you think about with a common thing people take NSAIDs like Motrin, ibuprofen, even aspirin a lot. A lot of people take aspirin, and you say, well, is it an interaction to drink with that? Technically, it isn't an interaction per se, right? But it's not necessarily good for your stomach.
Yeah, that's what I tell my
So you thin the line of thinning the line of your stomach can cause irritations. If you're prone already to ulcers or something like that,
poke a hole in your stomach.
Yeah, so you could end up, So if you're an occasional drinker and maybe you've had aspirin that day in the morning and now you're having a drink at night, well, no, I don't think that's a big deal. But if you're using ibuprofen 3 or 4 times a day and then you're using alcohol like that much, well, then I'd say, yeah, that's not a good idea. So you really don't. I don't think that. I always like to ask a lot more questions before I answer yes or no.
Sure. So if you guys do have any questions, feel free to let us know. That's what we're here for. So were you going to answer them?
Yeah, if I add a little bit more to that, alcohol gets metabolized by the liver, and your medications also get metabolized by the liver. So that alone, you're overworking your liver in that sense. So that's also pretty important too.
Sure.
And also there are certain medications out there that will literally make you vomit if you drink alcohol.
Happened to my friend.
There's some antibacterials, some antibiotics and some medications that will literally make you puke. So we don't want that to happen.
Sure.
Right. I think another common thing, everybody can take a Tylenol here and there. So like to James's point about metabolism, as opposed to the interaction with like a Motrin or an aspirin where it's just about the stomach irritation, Tylenol and drugs, many pain medicines have Tylenol in them. They have they all get metabolized by the liver. So the more Tylenol you're taking, then it's more work that you're putting on your liver. So then it's adding more and more stress to your body and potentially increasing the effects of the damage on your liver.
In general, I guess it's important to talk to your pharmacist.
It is, and to go along with our theme with the coping with stress, and a lot of people who's watching this may have experience with taking medications for that purposes, for depression, for mood issues, and things like that. And when you take benzodiazepines, some people, alprazolam, anything that ends with Zolams or whatever,
Xanax, that kind of stuff.
Sure, and try to fall asleep, and some people will still drink. The night before or night of rather, and try to fall asleep, and they can, and they pop on the pill, and that certainly has an additive effect, which can be pretty brutal to your body.
Sure.
Yeah, sometimes with you find when you're coping with a stressful situation, and you do use things like the alprazolam or Xanax and things like that. Sometimes because it's a short-acting thing, it can start working quickly, but then the effects also wear off fairly quickly, and before you know it, you're needing more because the whole thing just kind of compounds upon itself because you need more of the medicine. It's wearing off. You're getting then more anxious and more stressed out. So using those medicines as the sole way of coping with your stress and anxiety isn't probably a good idea. You have to be a multi-faceted approach usually to be successful.
Okay, makes sense. So let's get to alcohol now specifically. So how does that exactly, people before they go to bed, a little nightcap, it's a common expression, right? How does that actually work in your body, and what does that do in terms of sleep, right? We hear a lot about, don't drink caffeine before you go to bed. What kind of effects does alcohol have in that sense?
Well, please leave a comment. Do you really, have a glass of wine, glass of beer, or shots of vodka, whatever it is, what it may be? Do you do that before you go to bed, just to, if we refer to our other segment that we have, to kind of shut your brain off a little bit?
Sure.
It's an easy way to do it, but how does it really help? Well, alcohol is unfortunately never a good reason when you try to fall asleep well. You may be able to fall asleep quicker. However, it will never get you that deep sleep that you actually need.
Right.
And a lot of times, you wake up in the middle of the night, or even if you wake up in the morning, you don't feel that great, and that's the reason for that.
Sure.
Yeah, so you might get knocked out, but you're not going to get a restful sleep. So generally not a good idea. But there are so many different things that you can do to try to get a better night's sleep.
Exactly what I was just going to go off with too. Yeah, like alcohol in general is funny because I obviously drink alcohol, and if you do or don't, it's obviously a personal choice, or sometimes people have challenges with that and that kind of stuff, and everyone's in a different place. For me, I'm Italian, I bleed red wine, right? And I sweat olive oil, but I bleed red wine. So for me, and people often say with wine too, whether it's for going to sleep or, there's antioxidants in wine, right? The way I like to talk about alcohol too is that should not be a resource or a tool. If you enjoy it and like doing it, sure, have a glass, have whatever, but don't do it because of the nutrients or the impact it's going to have.
It's not an excuse, please. Please.
I hear that too often. Like, there's resveratrol in red wine, for example.
Right.
But you probably have to have 2 bottles of it to get a decent amount of resveratrol.
Probably more.
There are other
so.
foods that don't have alcohol that can have the same nutrients and be more nutritious in general, too.
Or visit our website to find out where you get some supplements for that, too.
True, that as well. So basically, when it comes to alcohol, do you guys find yourselves doing that kind of stuff to wind down at the end of the day? Like, just from a practical perspective, what's your take on that as an individual?
To me, that's not a preference. I prefer, like, if I'm either in a social setting or with dinner or something like that. For sleep-wise, no, I wouldn't say that would be a good idea. And like I said to you before, when you're looking at, trying to, try to cope with a specific stressful points, there are other things you should probably be doing to try to
sure, whether it's hygiene or other natural things.
Yeah, or some. there's different things you can do.
Sleep hygiene.
Yeah, sleep hygiene. Right, exactly. There's other things you can do to try to work off some of that stress and anxiety. And honestly, sometimes just reading is a good thing. You force yourself to get in there, and that habit of doing that's not a bad thing to do.
Well, I can certainly talk from personal experience. I am one of those. I will definitely take a shot before I go to bed.
Literally a shot?
Literally a shot. Sometimes, yeah. On the rock, or beer. It can be wine. I don't discriminate when it comes to alcohol. So and
good to know.
Well, from personal experience, obviously. What are some negative things the negative impact that it has on me with sleeping? First of all, it kind of makes you pee, So there are nights that if I go a little overboard, 1 becomes 2, 3, and then 4, right? So I have to get up to go to the bathroom.
Right.
Of course, there is always a hangover if I go a little overboard the morning after, and that's
or
something
a lot of
that,
overboard.
Well, depends, I guess. The hangover is certainly, a pain in the neck, and when you try to function throughout the day, and that actually relates to the next night, a terrible sleep hygiene along with that. So, it's definitely not recommended. It's just about the balance. Like, we're not saying don't drink at all at night. That's not what we're getting at. As we said, they're both Italian. They bleed red wine.
He's more of a vodka guy himself, actually.
Sure.
But.
So he might be sweating. That who knows, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's more like, well, it's okay to grab a glass of wine with your dinner. That's not a problem. But try to use that as your sole coping mechanism. As John mentioned, he tried to read. I should try to do some other things other than drinking as my go-to guy, or my best friend rather, to to cope with stress.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing, guys. If you guys have any questions, as always, feel free to give us a call or check out our website, hbpharmacy.com or gasparsbest.com for our nutraceuticals and all of that good stuff, too. Thanks a lot for joining. Comment below if you have any questions, comments, how you guys feel about this topic. It can be a little bit of a hot topic.
Of course.
Alcohol in general when it comes to health, nutrition, all that kind of stuff. So comment below if you have anything to say or contribute or any other things that we didn't bring up that you want to hear us talk about. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks.
Thank you.
For a
Almost
hangover.
every New Year's Day, somebody's like, "What is the remedy for the hangover? What's the perfect thing?" And some, people like have the certain amount of ibuprofen you take before you go to sleep, plus a certain volume of liquid, and other people have the Taylor ham and egg and cheese and some of these other things. To me,
What about Pedialyte?